Hey everyone, it's Mike. I want to start today with something honest, something I do not think gets talked about enough, especially among men, but honestly among people in general. For a long time in my life, a long time, I did not ask for help. Not because help was not available, not because the people around me would not have given it, but because something deep inside me had decided that asking for help was a sign of weakness, that needing help meant I was not capable enough, not strong enough, not together enough to handle my own life. I carried that belief for years without ever really examining it, without ever asking, is this actually true? Is this actually serving me? Is this actually making my life better? The answer, when I finally looked at it clearly, was no, it was not true. It was not serving me, and it was definitely not making my life better. Tonight, I want to tell you how I learned to ask for help, why it was so hard, what changed, and what asking for help has given me that trying to do everything alone never could. I grew up with a particular idea of what strength looked like. My father was a quiet, capable, self-sufficient man. Self-sufficient means able to provide for yourself and solve your own problems without depending on others. He fixed things around the house himself. He worked through difficulties without complaint. He did not talk much about his struggles. If he had them, he kept them private and he handled them alone. I admired him deeply. I still do. He's a good man, and he taught me many valuable things. But one of the things I absorbed, without him ever saying it directly, just by watching and imitating, was this: a capable man handles his own problems. Asking for help is what you do when you have run out of other options. It's the last resort, the thing you turn to only when everything else has failed. Last resort means the final option, the thing you try only when nothing else has worked. I took that belief into my adult life, and I built my whole approach around it. I handled things alone. I pushed through difficulties without telling anyone. When I was struggling, at work, in relationships, emotionally, I kept it inside, and I managed it privately. From the outside, I probably looked competent and together. On the inside, sometimes I was exhausted, sometimes I was lost. Sometimes I was carrying things that were genuinely too heavy for one person to carry alone. And I told nobody. The first crack in that wall came when I was 28. I was going through a difficult period at work. A project I'd been leading for months was not going well. Deadlines were being missed, the client was unhappy, my manager was under pressure, and I, the person responsible, was working longer and longer hours trying to fix everything myself, telling no one how bad it actually was, certain that if I just worked hard enough, I could turn it around alone. I could not turn it around alone. One evening, after another late night at the office, my colleague and friend Derek stopped by my desk on his way out. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said quietly, "Mike, what is going on? You do not look okay." I almost said the automatic answer, the one I'd given 100 times before. "I'm fine, just busy, nearly done." But something about the way he asked, the genuine care in it, the absence of judgment stopped me. And instead of the automatic answer, I told him the truth. I told him the project was in trouble. I told him I'd been trying to fix it alone for weeks. I told him I didn't know what to do next. He sat down, he listened, and then, without making me feel foolish or weak or incompetent, he helped me think through the problem clearly and honestly. We spent an hour talking through the situation. By the end of that hour, I had a clearer picture of what needed to happen and a plan for how to approach my manager the following morning. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't for weeks: lighter. Not because the problem was solved, it was not solved yet, but because I was no longer carrying it completely alone. That feeling stayed with me, and I kept thinking about it. Why had I waited so long? The help was there. Derek was right there, a person who genuinely wanted to help with the knowledge and the care to do it, and I had been sitting 5 feet away from him for weeks, drowning quietly, too proud to say a word. Too proud. That was the honest answer. not strong, proud. I started paying attention after that, really paying attention, to the cost of not asking for help. And the cost was significant. Time. I had wasted weeks trying to solve problems alone that could have been resolved in days with the right input from the right person. Energy. I had burned through enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy carrying things privately that didn't need to be carried alone. Relationships. By never showing vulnerability, never letting people see where I was struggling, I had kept everyone at a certain distance. I had good relationships, but they were relationships where people knew the competent together version of me, not the full version, not the struggling version, not the real version. And connection, real, deep, honest connection, requires the full version, not just the highlights, not just the capable moments, the real, complete, sometimes struggling human being underneath. I had been protecting myself from vulnerability and calling it strength, but what I was actually protecting myself from was intimacy, real closeness, the kind that only comes when you let someone see you honestly, including the parts you're not proud of, including the moments when you don't know what you're doing, including the times when you need help. So, what changed? How did I actually learn to ask for help? Slowly, imperfectly, one small moment at a time. After the Derek situation at work, I made a quiet decision. I was not going to stop being capable, or competent, or self-reliant. I was not going to become someone who outsourced every problem or leaned on others for things I could genuinely handle myself. But I was going to stop treating asking for help as a failure. I was going to try, genuinely try, to see it differently. I started with small things. When I did not know how to do something at work, instead of spending 2 hours figuring it out alone, I sent a quick message to someone who would know. When I was navigating something emotionally difficult, instead of processing it entirely inside my own head, I called Jason and I told him honestly how I was feeling. When I was overwhelmed, instead of pushing through silently, I said out loud, "I am overwhelmed right now." Those words, "I am overwhelmed right now," were some of the hardest I had ever said. I remember the first time I said them to Jason. We were on the phone, and he had asked how I was doing, and instead of "fine, busy," I said, "Honestly, I'm a bit overwhelmed lately." There was a pause, and then Jason said, "Okay, tell me about it." And I did, and he listened, and he said a few things that helped. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "I'm glad you told me. You do not have to carry everything alone, you know. You do not have to carry everything alone." I had known that intellectually for years, but hearing it from a friend who meant it, in a moment when I had actually shown him something real, landed completely differently. It landed in my body, not just my head. I felt it. That's what asking for help does when you let it. It doesn't just solve the practical problem, though it often does that too. It reminds you that you're not alone, that the people who care about you want to be there for you, that allowing someone to help you is not burdening them, it's trusting them. And being trusted with someone's genuine need is a gift. It deepens connection. It says, "I trust you enough to show you the real thing." I want to say something to anyone listening who recognizes themselves in this story. If you are someone who does not ask for help, I understand why. I really do. Maybe you were taught, like I was, that handling things alone is strength. Maybe you're afraid of seeming weak or incapable. Maybe you don't want to be a burden. Maybe you've asked before and been let down, and now asking feels too risky. All of those things are real. All of those things make sense. But here's what I know now, clearly and without doubt. The story that asking for help makes you weak is simply not true. It's one of the oldest and most persistent lies that people, especially men, are taught about themselves. Asking for help requires courage. It requires honesty. It requires the willingness to be seen in a moment of genuine need, and that is not weakness. That is one of the bravest things a person can do. The strongest people I know are the ones who can say clearly and without shame, "I need help with this. Can you help me?" They are not diminished by that honesty. They are bigger for it, more trustworthy, more real, more fully human. And the relationships built on that kind of honesty, the friendships, the partnerships, the connections where both people can show up completely, those are the richest, most sustaining relationships a person can have. I wouldn't trade them for anything. So what would I say to someone who is sitting right now with something too heavy, something they've been carrying alone for too long? Say it. Whatever it is, say it to someone you trust. Not perfectly, not with all the right words, just honestly. I am struggling with something. I don't know what to do. I need some help. Those are not the words of a weak person. Those are the words of someone who's finally being honest, finally putting down something too heavy to carry alone, finally letting someone else in. And on the other side of those words, I promise you, there is relief, there is connection, there is the particular lightness of no longer carrying something alone that was never meant to be carried alone. Ask for help. It's one of the most human things you can do. Thank you so much for sitting with me this morning. This story came from a very real place, and I hope it reached you somewhere real too. If today's story resonated with you and you want to keep learning natural, real English with stories that go a little deeper, please subscribe to Free Daily English right here on YouTube. New stories every week, completely free, made just for you. Just hit that subscribe button below. Take care of yourselves. Be honest with the people who love you. And remember, you do not have to carry everything alone. See you in the next video. See you soon.